Okay, so Grant, if you were a business leader, you had a marketing operation in your business now, or a sales and marketing director, where would you start? So you've already got a marketing operation, and it's not delivering what you hoped. Where would you start?
That's a great question. So a couple of things I'd say. So the first thing where marketing goes wrong, and it's not the most sexy bit of marketing, but it's really important, is understanding your target market.
Yes.
And people don't do that. So first of all, you need to understand the difference between segmentation and targeting.
Okay.
So segmentation is how you cut the cake.
Yes.
So if you imagine your marketplace as a chocolate gatto, how you cut the cake is market segmentation.
Yeah.
Targeting is then, having cut the cake, deciding which slices you're going to eat.
Yes.
And you know, to extend the metaphor slightly, is even if it's the nicest cake ever, eating the whole thing is probably not the optimum strategy, because by the end, you're going to feel extremely bloated and sick, right?
Yes.
Whereas, and on the other hand, if it really is the nicest cake in the world, limiting yourself to one slice is probably silly as well. So the idea is, can I take a few slices? It's probably way more than my real share, but at the end, I'm still feeling really good and I'm not feeling bloated or sick.
Absolutely.
So then the question is, how do you cut the cake? And most people don't spend enough time on their segmentation, and therefore their targeting isn't right. So there are three ways of cutting the cake, and really you should do all three when appropriate. Sometimes only two are, but level one is the one that everybody knows, which is demography and firmography. And firmography is for businesses what demography is for people. So if firmographics are things like number of employees, company turnover, vertical market sector, geographical location. So it's all very much the characteristics of the business in terms of as like the characteristics of a human. So that's level one. But most people don't do that very well. They don't even do that. They don't do it very well forensically. They kind of play lip service to it. So I'll give you an example. When people are business to business, they often don't think about demography at all, because they go, it's irrelevant, we're marketing to businesses. But of course you're not. You're marketing to people within a business. Right? And there is a question. So I'll give you an example. Right? Most people, most of the time, are marketing to the C-suite. And the reason why is because they hold the purse strings, right? You're normally trying to market to the person that can actually make a buying decision and spend money. And that's not in many companies is that a junior. Depends on what you offer, but most of the time that's senior roles. So the average age of a company director in the UK is 50. So that means that actually the majority of my audience maybe are 45 to 65. Now where that matters is, I'll just give you an example, right? Is cultural references. Right. So I did a campaign with a company where we did a parody of Grange Hill. Now we knew we were okay with that because the demographic age of the people that we were marketing at would absolutely remember Grange Hill. In fact, that demographic group, if when they get the parody, they'd be like smiling, going, I remember this. So that's the first layer. The second layer is behavioral, which is targeting or segmenting on the way that people act, the behaviors they actually exhibit. I was responsible for working on a campaign for a very, very high-end range of whiskies. The cheapest bottle in the range was £250 a bottle, and it went up from there. So you go, well, how do we target? Well, actually, on behaviour, you can. So you go, let's target Aston Martin drivers. Let's target people that go on luxury cruises. Now, obviously, just because you drive an Aston Martin, it doesn't mean you like whiskey. But the fact is, if you drive an Aston Martin, there's a few things we know about you. Number one, you're wealthy enough to buy the whiskey. On the goes of probability, there's always an outlier, but you're wealthy enough to buy it. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, you have a propensity for that kind of luxury stuff.
And those could be parallel behaviours similar to the behaviour you're selling.
Exactly right. I worked on a campaign once for a Bluetooth trackable suitcase. And we targeted frequent flyers because they were £1,500 a pop at the time. And we said, well, actually, the average family who needs 3 cases to go away is not going to spend $4,500 on cases. But if you travel 30, 40 times a year, actually having a trackable suitcase might be cool, and actually for £1,500 you're prepared to do it. So we weren't actually interested in demography at all. We didn't care how old you were, what gender or ethnicity or anything else. It was irrelevant. All we cared about was, do you fly a lot?
Yes.
But that's a behavior that we could isolate and, target BA Cold Card members and Star Alliance Platinum members, etc.
Yeah.
And then the third one is psychographic. And it's actually the most important one. It's the one in my experience that companies don't do at all, right? And psychographic is segmenting by the way that people think.
Yes.
And it's actually very important. And obviously you go, well, how do I segment by the way people think? So you break it down into attitudes, interests, and opinions. What are their attitudes? What are their interests and what are their opinions? And it's in relation to you. So if you're a ball bearing manufacturer, right, you do not need to worry about what their opinion on capital punishment is. That's not what we mean. But what's their attitude to business risk? What's their opinion on the way businesses should be run? What's their value set in terms of culture? And that can be at an organizational level as well as an individual level. And the thing is, people buy from people they like.
Yes.
What's interesting is people tend to only be able to sell to people they like as well. There's two sides to that coin.
Yes.
But what that means is when you go into, and I've been doing this 25 years, but when you go into companies and you isolate their top 20% of customers and you start to look at what makes them attitudes, interests, and opinions, what have they got in common? Yes. You'll always find commonalities because it's a reflection of who you are as a business.
Yes.
So in other words, you could have two accountants almost exactly the same, right? Or you can hardly tell them apart, except when you look through their client base, they'll be attracting quite a different type of customer probably, because if these companies are normally made in the images of the partners and even the senior partner, and one's, quite a high red personality and one's a much softer and different personality, chances are the culture of the businesses are quite different, and the cascade and it cascades down, and the types of customers that they attract are quite different. And so getting your segmentation, layering that cake in those three ways, you'll have very strange slices by then when you've layered it like that, and then picking those slices out is the key to good marketing. Because it's all about relevance and targeting in the right places on the basis people don't have money to waste. And most people are missing those things. And if you think about it, if you get your segmentation a bit wrong, then your targeting will be a bit wrong. If your targeting's a bit wrong, then your messaging will be a bit wrong. If your messaging's a bit wrong, then the channels you're putting it in is also a bit wrong. So you can see that it won't be completely wrong because no one does it completely wrong. But what you've done is you introduced error into every bits of the process. So by the time you get to the end, you're underwhelmed with the output.
Absolutely. And I guess it also informs and helps with something you've talked about earlier, which is brand and the importance of brand, because now you can start to shape your brand towards some of those psychographics, some of those behavioral attributes. You can aim it there, can't you?
It feeds
everything
into brand, it feeds into messaging, it feeds into everything. I would say no company ever went under because they knew their customers too well. That's never going to happen. But I insist that everybody spends in the marketing team spends 20% of their time hanging out with their customers and prospects. And in the right places, because there's the cliche that if you want to learn about lions, you have to go to the jungle, not the zoo. And I always say that one of the biggest values a marketing team or person brings to an organization is when you're sitting around a boardroom table, whether they're on the board or not, it's irrelevant, but when you're sitting around a boardroom table and you're thinking about things, they should be able to tell you it from the customer's perspective. And not because they're assuming, because they hang out so much with the customer, they've got a really, really good idea. You can always sanity check it, but they've got a really good idea truly of what that customer would be thinking.
One of the things I find quite interesting about that is most businesses would have a sales operation as well, who are out there all the time talking to customers. So again, it's how the marketing team liaise with sales as well. There's a huge amount, if they work together, they could work on to actually pin down those psychographics. Because as a salesperson, I'd have been out there all the time talking to customers constantly. And I might know, actually, there are some commonalities now I think about it. It's just I've never been asked the question.
Yeah, agreed. So sales have a lot of market intelligence, which often doesn't get fed back.
Yes, very interesting.